Hey guys, I'm Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Bandai ThunderCats Classic 6-inch Lion-O. At the end of 2011, Bandai announced they'd be making a change to their ThunderCats Classic line, going from the 8-inch scale to the 6-inch scale. While Bandai did say that the 8-inch line would continue in some fashion down the road, the announcement that their main Classic line was now in the 6-inch scale was met with quite a bit of a mixed reaction. The new 6-inch figures are now beginning to hit stores, so we'll take a look at this newly scaled version of the main hero, Lion-O. 6-inch Lion-O comes in the same style box that the 8-inch Classic figures were already coming in. The large window completely shows the figure within, with the character's name running sideways on the front. There's a piece of new artwork featured. While the 8-inch Classic line utilized some more epic-feeling, almost more realistic artwork, it now appears Bandai has switched to some new artwork that is much more animated-looking. The back of the box shows off the figure within, as well as gives us a glance at some of the new products hitting shelves in 2012. Now, if you already picked up the 8-inch version of Lion-O, this figure is almost the exact same build in a smaller scale. There are a few minor differences between the two, but mostly they look the same. Now, if you've watched my other ThunderCats Classic reviews, then you know what some of my complaints were on those. So the first thing I want to do is address how Bandai has handled this new 6-inch scale and see if any of those issues have been corrected. The first thing I immediately noticed is that they are no longer using that shiny plastic. This new Lion-O has a much more matte finish, and it makes an incredible difference. I was not a fan of that shiny plastic Bandai used on some of the past figures because it seemed to feel a little more cheap, and it hurt the overall appearance of the figure. There is a world of difference here, and it makes the figure look so much better. Now, there are unfortunately some issues Bandai still should look into correcting. For one, those unpainted joints still exist at Lion-O's feet. That's really becoming a pet peeve of mine. Also, his back is full of exposed screws, something that we didn't have on the 8-inch Lion-O, but has been present in some of the modern ThunderCats. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a closer look at the new 6-inch Lion-O's articulation. Now, if you've already got the 8-inch Lion-O, you can see pretty much right off the bat that there's not a whole lot of difference between the two's articulation. There are a few things that are slightly different. The 8-inch Lion-O actually had a separate neck where the head was on top, so the neck actually kind of rolled around, and honestly, this actually caused bobblehead issues. The new 6-inch Lion-O does not have that separate neck joint. The head is actually just plugged onto the neck that's part of the sculpt of the body. So the head only actually turns left and right. We don't get any up and down movement with the head. We only get the standard left and right. It's not on the ball joint like the other one was. Honestly, that's not terrible. It kind of stinks that we can't do any like looking up poses or anything like that. But at least that eliminates the bobblehead issue that has plagued some of the 8-inch figures. One of the other things that the 8-inch figures had were ball joints on the hands where the hands attached and wrist joints that allowed the figure to kind of move the wrist up and down, which was really cool for getting that like sword aloft pose. The new 6-inch figures do not have that joint in the wrists. The hands are interchangeable again, so you can actually pop it off and you can see that the little ball joint is all one solid sculpt with the forearm. So there's no actual joint there to make the wrist move actually like forward and backward like that. Now, one thing that's cool about that, I always talked about with the 8-inch figures how that joint on the wrist actually made it hard to change the hands because that little ball rolled around so much. Now that it's a solid piece, it's much easier to change the hand joint, so I do like that. And honestly, since it's on the ball, it does still roll around and you can still get some pretty good poses out of it. You can't quite get the same sword aloft pose, but you can get pretty close. So, you can change Lion-O to having 2 open hands if you want to. And then you do have the 2 hands that are molded for holding weapons. So that way you can have them holding the Sword of Omens in either of these hands if you want to. And then the cool thing is, just like on the 8-inch figure, he comes with the Gauntlet. Now, this actually does have that same little blue clip, so if you want to, you can clip this to his side, and you can have the Gauntlet at his side. And just like on the 8-inch figure, he's got the short Sword of Omens, which can slide into the Gauntlet, just like so, and that way he can carry that at his waist, which is actually a really cool feature. I always like that on the 8-inch figure, so I'm actually glad that they carried that over to this. Now, if you want him to actually wear the Gauntlet, you just pop out that little blue piece that connects to his waist, and then you pop off his hand, and then the ball joint on his wrist just plugs into the socket in the glove, and now we have Lion-O wearing the Gauntlet. And if you want to, you can still store the short Sword of Omens right there on his wrist, which is a really cool little action feature.
This time around, Lion-O features a screaming head sculpt. I assume Bandai did this so that the figure would be different than their 8-inch version. And I didn't like that at first, but after having the figure in hand, I must say that I do actually really like the sculpt on his face. I do hope Bandai will give us a standard face at some point, but I really like the ferocity of this one, and he's great for some in-battle posing of the figure. He includes both the long Sword of Omens and the short Sword of Omens, just like the 8-inch version. They are detailed the same, with the long sword featuring the ThunderCats logo, and the short sword featuring the Eye of Thundera. And unfortunately, they are still made of that really gummy plastic, so they'll probably come out of the package a little warped. But even still, the Sword of Omens is a really cool looking blade, and once you get it straightened out, it looks awesome in his hands. Alright guys, it's comparison time. Here's Lion-O standing alongside the vintage figure from LJN. You can really see how the details on this new figure really do improve the overall appearance, making him much more representative of the cartoon series. Here he is alongside the 8-inch version so that you can see the scale difference and the similarities between the two. And finally, here he is alongside the 6-inch modern Lion-O. I was a bit hesitant when Bandai first announced the new scale. Yes, I was one who originally felt that the 8-inch scale was too big, but I also felt the pain of those collectors who didn't want to change scale after investing in the 8-inch line. But I'll tell you what, after getting this 6-inch scale in hand, I can honestly say that I am pretty happy with this figure. Yes, there are a few minor things I think Bandai should still address, and hopefully they do in time, but overall, this is a really cool action figure. The 6-inch scale is a bit smaller than I was expecting, and Lion-O is now about a head shorter than Masters of the Universe Classics He-Man, so the scale between these two lines still isn't perfect. I know that's actually important to some folks because these two franchises really do share a lot of fans. But even still, I really like this figure. It completely surprised me. After I got it in hand and played around with it, I found myself really happy with this new scale, and I definitely like it better than the 8-inch version. So, maybe Bandai is on the right track now. This 6-inch line has got some real potential, and I'm very excited to see what else it brings. Until next time.